Hey guys, welcome back. In the last session, we started our discussion related to Kubernetes services, right? So could you please tell me what is Kubernetes service and why we need to go for Kubernetes service? What is Kubernetes service and why we need to go for Kubernetes service, guys? Can anyone speak out? What is Kubernetes service?
Sir, if we want to access the code outside the cluster, then we need to Kubernetes service.
Sir, because pods, when they're deleted, their IP changes. So in order to have a common IP, we go for services.
Yep, good. Whenever we create pods in the Kubernetes cluster, every pod will get a IP address, but we should not access the pods by using IP. The reason is pods are ephemeral. So pods are short-lived objects. When the pod is recreated, pod IP is going to change. So that's why we should not access the pods by using pod IP. So here, in order to access the pods in the Kubernetes, we have a concept called services. How many types of services available? There are 3 types of services available in the Kubernetes. First one is called cluster IP. Second one is called node port. Third one is load balancer. If you want to access your pods only within the cluster, you don't want outside people to access your pods, then you can go for cluster IP. When you go for cluster IP, for all your pods, one IP address will be generated. That IP you can access only within the cluster. That is called a cluster IP. Suppose you want to access your pods outside the cluster also, then we can go for node port. We can go for node port. Good. When we go for node port, we will set the node port number in the manifest YML. Suppose if you don't set the node port number in the manifest YML, Kubernetes will generate a node port number in the range of 30,000 to 32,767. Okay, now let me delete everything available in my cluster. For that, we can go for a command kubectl delete all -all. Kubectl delete all -all. Then what happened? My pod got deleted and that pod is exposed by using a service. That service got deleted. Okay. Now I have my manifest YML. Let us go for our manifest YML, Java web app.yml. If you see in this manifest YML, I have combined pod specification as well as service specification. Pod specification contains which pod should be created, by using which image pod should be created, which container should be created, what is the port number of the container, what is the label of the pod. Right. This is the specification to create the pod. And once the pod is created, by using this pod label, we are going to expose the pod as a node port. Okay. So this is my service specification. In the service specification, kind is a service, type is a node port. Here you can give the type as a cluster IP, or you can give the type as node port, or you can give the type as load balancer also. Okay, now I want to change this service type to load balancer. Already node port we have seen and cluster IP also we have seen. Now I want to go for load balancer. Service type I am giving as load balancer. Then when we go for service type as load balancer, you no need to give the node port number for that because we are going for service. When we go for service, node port is not required. Okay. Service type I'm giving as load balancer. Guys, observe what will happen when I give service type as load balancer. Okay. What will happen when we give service type as load balancer? Okay. Now let me save this manifest. Manifest is saved. kubectl get pods. No pods are available. kubectl get service. No services are available related to our application. I have deleted the pods and I have deleted the service. By using which command I have deleted? I have deleted them by using kubectl delete all all. So whatever the pods with cluster will not be deleted, guys. When I execute this kubectl delete command, cluster will not be deleted. Only our pods will be deleted and our services will be deleted. Okay. Now I want to apply this manifest. If you see in this manifest file, I have given service type as load balancer. So what will happen when we go for service type as a load balancer? Log in into our AWS account. Go to our AWS account dashboard. Now in this dashboard, can you see here load balancers available? What is the load balancer count in my AWS account currently? Guys, can you tell me what is the count of load balancers in my account? Load balancer is available or load balancer is not available now? Load balancer is available or load balancer is not available now? Currently in my account, load balancer is not available. Now let me execute this file. I'm having my Kubernetes manifest file. Manifest YML is available. In this manifest YML, pod specification is available and the service specification is also available. Let's apply this. kubectl apply -f java webapp.yml. Now with this my pod is created and my service is created. Let us check how the pod is created. kubectl get pods. kubectl get pods concept is available. Now can you see my pod is created and running? 18 seconds ago, my pod is created and that pod is in the running status. Similarly, let's go for kubectl get service. When we go for kubectl get service, can you see my service is created with the type as a load balancer and this is my load balancer URL. And this is my load balancer URL. Okay, guys. Now here go to this EC2 dashboard. Can you see the load balancer URL now? Can you see the load balancer URL now? When you use service type as a load balancer in the cloud, the load balancer will be created. Click on this load balancer. One load balancer got generated. Select this load balancer. So this is the load balancer which is created by our Kubernetes. This is the load balancer which is created by our Kubernetes. So you can go for a cluster IP, you can go for cluster IP, you can go for node port, and you can go for load balancer also. This is my load balancer. This is my load balancer URL that is generated. When load balancer got created, by using this load balancer, we can access our application. By using this load balancer, we can access our application. Health check, listeners, monitoring, tags, migration, right? Tags, Kubernetes cluster is there, and description. With this, we are able to see that one load balancer got created for our pods. Our pods are deployed and our pods are exposed by using load balancer. Okay. Now, so here if you go to here, the load balancer got created. Either load balancer is available. For that load balancer, the URL is also available. This is our load balancer URL. Okay. Let me go here. Let me access my load balancer URL. I'm trying to access my load balancer URL. So load balancer URL is accessed. Then Java space web space app. Now let's access our Java web application, which is running in the Tomcat server. I'm giving this URL in the chat box. Can you guys click on that URL and can you see our application is accessible or our application is not accessible? Guys, our application is accessible or our application is not accessible? Our application is accessible. Sir, what is the difference between node port and load balancer? When you go for node port, right? So here our pod is creating on one worker node. Here assume that our pod is created on one worker node. When the pod is created on that worker node, we are accessing the pod by using this node IP address. When the pod is created on the worker node, we are accessing that pod by using that node IP address. Suppose my pod is created here also. Okay. If you use IP address to access the pod, always your request will go to that particular worker node pod only. So load will increase on that particular node. Okay. So if you create your application deployment by using node port, so you are accessing that application by using IP address of that node, that worker node IP address you are using to access the pod. Okay, fine. For example, if 1 lakh users are accessing your application, will you send all 1 lakh requests to only first worker node? If you send 1 lakh requests to only first worker node, then what is the problem? If you send 1 lakh requests to the first worker node, then load will increase on the worker node. Load will increase on the worker node. So we should not send the load to single worker node. We need to distribute the load to multiple worker nodes. Now what we do is our pods will be created on the both worker nodes. In future we will see. Today only we will understand how to create our pods in the multiple worker nodes. How to create our pods in the multiple worker nodes. When I create the pods in the multiple worker nodes, which IP address you will use to access? Which IP address you will use to access your pods? Will you use node 1 IP address or node 2 IP address? There are 2 pods available. The 2 pods are running on the 2 worker nodes. So is it recommended to access them by using node IP, or it is not recommended to access them by using node IP? If you access them by using node IP, then what will happen? Always the request will go to first worker node or it will go to the second worker node. But I don't want to specify the IP address. For these 2 pods, I want to create one load balancer. For these 2 pods, I want to create one load balancer. Okay, guys. Now, customers will send the request to load balancer. Load balancer will distribute the traffic to both worker nodes. Some requests will go to worker node 1, some requests will go to worker node 2. The load will be distributed. So if you go for node port, how we will access the pods in the node port service? Always in the node port service, we will access the pods by using IP address, right? So here we are using node public IP address. Now, in first worker node, my pod is running. In the second worker node also, my pod is running. In the first worker node, my pod is running. In the second worker node also, my pod is running. Okay. So now tell me, when we are running our cloud cluster, when we are running our cluster in the cloud, going for node port is recommended or going for load balancer is recommended? Going for node port is recommended or going for load balancer is recommended? If you go for node port, always your request will go to single worker node. When you go for node port, always your request will go to single worker node. But if you go for load balancer, what is the advantage? If you go for load balancer, now you can see the service type. When I execute kubectl get service, my Java web application service is deployed in the Kubernetes cluster with the service type as a load balancer. This is the URL of the load balancer. This is the URL of the load balancer. You just to copy this URL, go to the browser and give your application context path. What is our application context path? Java web-app. Java web-app. Now, when I hit that URL, you can see my application is accessible in the browser. So when I access my application by using load balancer URL, request is going to the first worker node, a request is going to the second worker node. We don't need to bother about that. Load balancer will distribute our traffic to both worker nodes in the round robin fashion. Okay. If your pods are running on the both worker nodes, one request will go to first worker node, second request will go to second worker node, third request will go to first worker node, fourth request will go to second worker node. In the round robin fashion, it is going to process our requests. I hope you got the clarity. What is load balancer and how to use the load balancer service to expose our pods. How to use the load balancer service to expose our pods. Now here we are going for load balancer. Load balancer. Load balancer, it is one of the Kubernetes service approach. It is one type of Kubernetes service. It is one type of Kubernetes service. It is used to expose our pods using load balancer. It is used to expose our pods outside the cluster using load balancer. It is used to expose our pods outside a cluster using load balancer. With load balancer service, when we use load balancer as service type, then one load balancer will be created. One load balancer will be created in AWS cloud. In AWS cloud. Using load balancer URL, we can access our application. Load balancer will distribute our traffic to, the traffic to multiple worker nodes. Load balancer will distribute the traffic to multiple worker nodes in round robin fashion. Load balancer will distribute the traffic to multiple worker nodes in the round robin fashion. So if I go for node port, what is the problem, guys? Can you tell me what is the problem when we go for node port? First one is cluster IP, second one is node port, and the third one is load balancer. So what is a cluster IP? When you go for a cluster IP, for all the pods, one IP address will be generated. That IP will be accessed only within the cluster. Okay, we can't access our pods outside the cluster. If I want to access the pods outside the cluster, then I need to go for node port. When you go for node port, then you need to access the pods by using node IP address. Suppose my pods are running on 2 worker nodes, then which IP we will use? If you use one IP, always the request will go to the single worker node. Then the burden will be increased on the worker node. So my pod is running on the first worker node as well as in the second worker node. So if I want to access my pod, I need to use the node IP address, either first worker node IP address or second worker node IP address. When we use the node IP address, always the request will go to the same machine. If 1 lakh users are accessing my application, then burden will be increased. I want to distribute the load to first worker node and second worker node. I don't want to send all the requests to one machine. I want to distribute the load. I want to distribute the incoming traffic to both worker nodes. To distribute the traffic to both worker nodes, we need to go for a concept called load balancer. Whenever we create a load balancer, internally in the AWS, there is a concept called load balancer concept. In the AWS, load balancer concept is available. So load balancer is not running in any machine, guys. In our cluster, where is the load balancer running? Load balancer is not related to our cluster. Load balancer is one service in the AWS cloud. In the EC2 service, load balancer concept is available. Load balancer is not running in our cluster now. So load balancer is outside of our cluster. Load balancer is outside of our cluster. So now here, AWS load balancer is created. Whenever we expose our pods, this is my pod 1 and this is my pod 2. Assume that. These pods are running on both worker nodes, pod 2. Now here, whenever use service type as load balancer, now AWS load balancer is created. Sir, AWS load balancer is inside our cluster or AWS load balancer is outside the cluster? AWS load balancer is outside the cluster. Now, end users are going to access our application by using load balancer URL. Whenever we send a request to the load balancer URL, what is the advantage? Load balancer URL will connect to worker nodes in the round robin fashion. Now, end users will access our application by using load balancer URL. When they access our application by using load balancer URL, it will distribute the traffic to all the worker nodes which are available to run our pods. Okay, guys. Load balancer will not fail. That is robust solution that is provided by AWS. Whatever the services that are providing by AWS, those services will not fail, guys. Because it is a cloud running from 2006 onwards, AWS cloud services are 99.9999% highly available. Load balancers are not going to fail. Your control plane will not fail. Your load balancer will not fail. Got my point? Are you able to understand when to go for load balancer service type? Are you guys able to understand when to go for load balancer service type? Good. What is the advantage with the load balancer service type? What is the advantage with the load balancer service type? Come on. What is the advantage with the load balancer service type? Load will be distributed to all the pods available in the all the worker nodes. If 1 lakh requests are coming, 1 lakh requests will not go to single worker node. If you go for node port, then if you go to node port, then if you go for node port, always your request will go to. If you go for node port, always your request will go to particular node. In the node port, IP address we are going to use. Always we are sending the request to particular machine. When we send the request to particular machine, button will be increased on that machine. So we need to distribute the traffic. So to distribute the traffic, we are going for load balancer. Whenever you use service type as a load balancer in the AWS, if you go to EC2 dashboard, one load balancer got created. So if you go to this load balancer, the load balancer generated by our Kubernetes concept. Okay. So this load balancer you can access by using kubectl get service. We can see what is the service type. My service type is a load balancer, Java Web Application Service. This is the external IP. This is the IP address of the load balancer. Here 80 is the load balancer port, and these 30628 is generated internally. We don't need to bother about this port number. When you go for load balancer, directly we are going to use this load balancer URL. We are not going to consider this port number. Okay, directly you can take this URL and you can go and hit that URL. When you hit that URL with your application name, then the application is accessible. Now if two pods are running in the two worker nodes, when I hit this URL, request will go to which worker node? Request will go to which worker node? That depends on the load balancer. Load balancer will distribute the traffic to both worker nodes in the round robin fashion. Got it? Load balancers are free or commercial. Load balancers also commercial. Load balancers are commercial. Okay. So once your practice is completed, then you delete it. Okay. kubectl delete all all. I'm deleting my pods. I'm deleting my service. When I delete my service here, my load balancer also will be deleted. Go to here, refresh. Now, can you see what is the load balancer count now? Guys, can you see what is the load balancer count now? Earlier, the load balancer count is 1. Now, the load balancer count is 0. Load balancers are commercial. So that's why I'm deleting my Kubernetes components. How to delete my Kubernetes components? How to delete my Kubernetes components? To delete the Kubernetes components, I'm using kubectl delete all all. With this, my pod is deleted, my service is deleted, and my load balancer is also deleted. Now, can we access our application? Now our application is not accessible because the load balancer got deleted. Because the load balancer got deleted. Okay, guys. Are you clear with my point? What is load balancer? Okay. How to create the service type with the load balancer? So this is our manifest YML. In this manifest YML, we need to specify the service type as load balancer. Okay. And a node port you can remove. This is not required. When you go for service type as a load balancer, then it is not required to specify node port. What is load balancer? It is one type of Kubernetes service. It is used to expose our pods outside the cluster using load balancer. When we use load balancer as service type, then one load balancer will be created in the AWS cloud. Using load balancer URL, we can access our application. Now, before going to create the deployment, let us delete everything. kubectl delete all --all. Then kubectl apply -f. Here your manifest YML. Here manifest YML file we will give as input. In this manifest YML, pod specification is available and service specification is also available. After applying this, we can execute the pods which are created, kubectl get pods, and we can execute kubectl get service to check the service we have created. And in service, we can see load balancer URL. We can see load balancer URL as external IP. Load balancer URL as external IP. Using that URL, we can access our application. We can access our application. What is that URL? LBR URL, load balancer URL /Java web app. So with this, our application will be accessible. So now remember, load balancers are commercial. So after our practice is completed, we need to delete. After practice is completed, delete Kubernetes pods and services. How to delete them? By using kubectl delete all. So that when we delete the Kubernetes service, load balancer also will be deleted. Okay. So with this, we understood 3 service types in the Kubernetes. One is cluster IP, second one is node port, third one is load balancer. Are you guys clear? What is a cluster IP? What is a node port? And what is a load balancer? Kubernetes services. Kubernetes service is used to expose pods outside the cluster. We have 3 types of Kubernetes services. One is a cluster IP, second one is node port, and third one is load balancer. We need to write service manifest YML to expose our pods. Got my point? Whenever we create the pods, those pods are accessible only within the cluster. Okay. And pods are short-lived objects. So pods will be recreated. When the pod is recreated, pod IP will be changed. So we can't access the pods by using IP. So that's why we are going to use services to expose the pods. Cluster IP, load balancer, and a node port. Cluster IP means within the cluster we can access. Node port means outside the cluster we can access, but we need to access with the node IP address. Right. If I access the pods by using node IP, always the request will go to the same worker node. But my pods are running in the multiple worker nodes. I want to distribute the incoming traffic. To distribute the incoming traffic, then what we will do? We will go for load balancer. When we go for load balancer, what is the advantage? One load balancer will be created in the cloud. Using that load balancer, we can access our application. So if your pods are running in the multiple worker nodes, no problem. For all the pods, load balancer will be created. Whenever we access the application by using load balancer URL, our traffic will be distributed to multiple worker nodes. So load distribution will happen with the load balancer. Clear? Is it clear for all of you? Yeah. So now, what is our pod life cycle? Let's understand pod life cycle. So as we discussed, pod is the smallest building block that we can run in the Kubernetes cluster. Pod is a smallest building block that we can run in Kubernetes cluster. Okay, guys. So we are making a request for the Kubernetes cluster to deploy our application. Okay. We are sending request to the Kubernetes cluster by using kubectl. We are using kubectl to create. We are using kubectl to send request to control plane to create pod. Okay. We are using kubectl to send the request to control plane to create the pod. What is the pod? Pod is a smallest building block that we can run in the Kubernetes cluster. We are using kubectl to send the request to control plane to create the pod. Okay, guys. Now here, API server in the control plane, API server will receive our request. API server will receive our request and will store request details in etc. It will store in the etc to create the pods. We discussed in the Kubernetes architecture, we are using control plane. Using that control plane, we are sending the request to the, we are using control plane to run our cluster. Control plane is nothing but our master node that is managing by AWS cloud. We are using kubectl to communicate with the control plane. And by using kubectl, I'm asking cluster to create the pod by writing manifest YML. Whenever we execute kubectl apply command with the YML, then kubectl will send a request to the control plane. So in the control plane, API server will be available. API server will receive our request and will store request details in the etcd. Okay. Scheduler will find unscheduled pods in the etcd. Got it? Scheduler will find unscheduled pods and it will schedule in worker nodes. Okay, guys. Now here we have node agent. What is the node agent? Node agent is our kubelet. Node agent will see pod schedule, and it will fire Docker engine. Inside the Docker engine will run our container. Docker engine will run our container. Okay, guys. And remember, pods are ephemeral. What is the meaning of ephemeral? Pods are ephemeral. Nothing but they are short-lived objects. When the pod is recreated, the pod IP is going to change. So this is our pod lifecycle. Pod is a smallest building block that we can run in the Kubernetes cluster. We are using kubectl to send our request to control plane to create the pod. Whenever we send the request to the control plane, API server will receive our request and will store request details in the etcd. Scheduler will find unscheduled pods and it will schedule in the worker nodes. Node agent will see pod schedule and it will fire Docker engine. Kubelet is a node agent. It will see the schedule given by the scheduler and it will fire our Docker engine. Docker engine will run our container. Okay. When the pods are running in the container, we need to remember pods can crash, pods can damage. When the pods are damaged, new pods will be created. So when the new pods are created, new IP address will be generated for the pod. So we should not access the pod by using pod IP. That's why we are going for services. If you want to access the pods within the cluster, you can expose the pods by using cluster IP. Cluster IP will not change even if your pod is recreated. If you want to expose the pods outside, then you have node port and load balancer. If you go for node port, based on the node port IP address, we need to access the pods. But I want to distribute the load to the multiple worker nodes. My pods will run in the multiple worker nodes. I want to distribute the load. When I distribute the load, how to access the pods? For that, we are going for load balancer. When you use load balancer service, one load balancer will be created in the AWS. When we access the load balancer URL, it will distribute the traffic to both worker nodes in which our pods are running. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear with the pod life cycle? Right. So can I combine pod manifest and the service manifest in the single YML? Can I combine my pod manifest and service manifest in the single YML? Yes. So what is the purpose of a pod manifest and what is the purpose of service manifest? What will be there in the pod manifest? What will be there in the service manifest? Guys, what is the purpose of a pod manifest and what is the purpose of service manifest? Pod manifest will contain the Docker image to create the container. Pod manifest will represent the Docker image to create the container. Okay. And label will be available. In the service manifest, we will have the pod label selector to expose the pod for the accessibility. So pod manifest will contain the service, pod manifest will contain the container information. Service manifest will contain the pod label to expose the pods outside or inside. Okay, good. Perfect. Perfect. Now guys, in the Kubernetes, there is a concept called namespaces. Let's understand a concept called namespaces. So if anybody from development background, namespaces are nothing but packages in the Java. In the Java project, we will create multiple classes. So those classes will be created in the multiple packages, right? One set of classes will group in one package, DAO classes, service classes, controller classes, DTO classes. So all the classes will be divided into multiple packages. So similarly, in the Kubernetes cluster, I want to deploy two applications, guys. Now assume that this is my cluster. This is my cluster. In this cluster, I want to run two applications. Okay. For one application, I'm creating 3 pods. Pod 1, pod 2, pod 3. Okay, guys. And for another application, I'm creating another 3 pods. Or else assume that some pods are related to database and some pods are related to application. Application pods are available and the database pods also available. So these are application pods, P1, P2, and P3. P1, P2, P3, like this I have 3 pods. Here also I'm having P1, P2, and P3. Like that there are 3 pods available. First 3 pods, these 3 pods are related to application pods and these 3 pods are related to database pods. Okay. Now, how to group them? I want to give a logical grouping for the pods I'm creating in the cluster. So inside the cluster, you can create multiple pods. In the pods, containers will run. Now total there are 6 pods are available, but in the 6 pods, same application is not running. In the first 3 pods, application containers are running. In the next 3 pods, database containers are running. Now I want to identify in which pods my application is running, in which pods my database is running. And in future, I want to delete all the database pods and I want to delete application pods. So here, when we are creating multiple pods in the Kubernetes cluster, it is always recommended to group the pods logically. To group the pods logically, we are going to use namespace. Now here, I will give Ashok IT application namespace, and here I will give the group name Ashok IT DB namespace. Okay, like this I'm going to create the namespace and I will create the pods under the namespace. So namespace nothing but it is a cluster inside the cluster. Namespaces are used to group the pods. What is the purpose of namespaces? Namespace is used to group the pods logically. Namespaces are equal to packages in the Java. Okay guys, in the Java, we are going to create several classes and we are going to divide the classes into packages, right? So these classes are belongs to one operation. These classes are belongs to other operation. So project will contain the multiple programs. The programs will be divided. Okay guys, now simple example. In our institute, multiple batches are running. Are we conducting a single class for all the batches in a day? Or we are conducting multiple classes for the multiple batches? Are we conducting a single class daily in the Ashok IT? Or we are conducting multiple classes in the Ashok IT for the courses? We are conducting multiple, we are running multiple courses and we are running multiple batches. Some people are belongs to DevOps batch. Some people are belongs to Docker and Kubernetes Jenkins batch. Some people are belongs to Java batch. Some people are belongs to Python batch. Some people are belongs to UI batch. So we are dividing students into multiple groups. Logically, we are dividing the people to multiple groups in which course they are interested. Based on the course they are joining, we are dividing the people into multiple groups. Okay, guys. Now, similarly, in the Kubernetes cluster, we are creating multiple pods. Some pods are related to application pods and some pods are related to database pods. These are app pods, application pods, and these are DB pods. Okay, so there are total 6 pods available. The 6 pods I want to group logically into 2 groups. These 6 pods I want to logically divide into 2 groups. First 3 pods are belongs to application pods. So for them, I will create one namespace. So inside the namespace, my pods will be created. And the last 3 pods are related to database pods. Those 3 pods I will group into one namespace that is called Ashok IT DB namespace. So what is namespace? Namespaces are equal to packages in the Java. Right. Namespaces are used to divide, are used to group our Kubernetes components. Now I'm creating the pods and I'm creating the services. I can divide the pods and services into multiple groups by using these namespaces. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. We can create multiple namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster. We can create multiple namespaces in Kubernetes cluster. So right, example, I can create Ashok IT app namespace, Ashok IT DB namespace, etc. right? So like this, we can create multiple namespaces. Okay, namespaces are isolated with each other. One namespace does not have any relation with the another namespace. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. Namespaces are equal to packages in the Java. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. We can create multiple namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster. Ashoka IT application namespace, Ashoka IT DB namespace. Okay, guys. Now, namespaces, when I create multiple namespaces in the cluster, they are logically isolated. So here I'm creating Ashoka IT namespace. Application pods I will create under Ashoka IT namespace. And I'm creating DB namespace. Database pods I will create under the DB namespace. So tomorrow, when I delete the DB namespace, and then all database pods will be deleted. You no need to delete your pods manually. Whenever you create the pods under a namespace, if you delete this namespace, and then all database pods will be deleted. But application pods will not be deleted because this namespace having only database pods. Whenever we delete database namespace, then only my database pods will be deleted. When I delete my application namespace, then application pods will be deleted. So like this, we are grouping our Kubernetes components in the cluster by using a concept called namespaces in the Kubernetes. Namespaces are equal to packages in the Java. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. We can create multiple namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster. Ashoka IT application namespace and Ashoka IT DB namespace is available. Namespaces are equal to packages in the Java. Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components. We can create multiple namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, namespaces are logically isolated with each other. Namespaces are logically isolated with each other. Okay, guys. Right. Now here, guys, here in the Kubernetes, there are some predefined namespaces available, and we can create our custom namespaces also. Right. Remember, when we delete namespace, all the components created under that namespace, will be deleted. When we delete a namespace, all the components created under that namespace also will be deleted. Okay. Now let us execute a command here. kubectl get namespace. kubectl get a namespace. Now you see, when I execute a command called kubectl get namespace, it is giving some namespaces. So here the namespace is a default, kube node lease, kube public, and kube system. So these are the predefined namespaces that are provided by our Kubernetes cluster. Now, whenever we create the pod or when we create the service, our pods and services will be created under this default namespace. Now you see, when I execute a command, kubectl get pods, then what is happening? No resources found in the default namespace. So by default, where our pods will be created? Under default namespace. If you don't specify any namespace in your manifest YML, if you don't specify any namespace in the manifest YML, then our pods and services will be created under default namespace. And here there are 3 other namespaces also available: kube node lease, kube public, and kube system. Now let me go for kubectl get pods. kubectl get pods. Now I want to specify the details under kube public or kube system namespace. kubectl get pods -n kube system. -n kube system nothing but I want to get the pods which are running in the kube system namespace. If you go for that, you can see in the kube system namespace, kube proxy is running. In our worker node, kubelet and kube proxy will be available, right? So under the kube system, the kube proxy is running. Now let me go for kube public. Let me go for kube public. Now, when I go for kube public, no pods are available under kube public. Similarly, kube system, kube node release, these namespaces will be used by our Kubernetes cluster. For our pods and for our services, the default namespace will be used. Right. Now, here we can use a command to check all the namespaces available. Right. We can get the Kubernetes namespaces using below command. We can get Kubernetes namespaces using below command. Okay. So what is that command? kubectl get ns, or you can use a command kubectl get namespace. Kubectl get namespace, or you can use kubectl get ns. What is the purpose of this command? This command will give you what all the namespaces that are running in the Kubernetes. Okay. Now here, these are the namespaces which are running in the Kubernetes. In the Kubernetes, by default, 4 namespaces will be available. In Kubernetes cluster, we will have 4 namespaces. In Kubernetes, we will have below namespaces by default. Below namespaces by default. Okay. What are those namespaces? First one is default namespace. First one is default. Second one is kube public, kube system, kube node lease. Okay. So like this, there are 4 namespaces are available. So remember, kube public, kube system, kube node lease. These namespaces will be used by our Kubernetes cluster. And whenever we create the pods, we create the services, they are getting created under this default namespace. Okay, guys. If we create Kubernetes components, it can be a pod or it can be a service. If you create the pods and services without using the namespace, then our pods and services will be created under this default namespace. Okay, we need to remember that. When we create a Kubernetes component, it can be a pod or it can be a service. Without giving the namespace, if you try to create the pod and if you try to create the service, then they will be created under the default namespace. When we create Kubernetes component without using namespace, then what will happen? Then Kubernetes will consider default namespace. Then Kubernetes will consider default namespace for that. Clear? Now here, default namespace is used to create our components, our pods, our services. Whatever the remaining 3, the remaining 3 will be used by Kubernetes. Kubernetes will be using this kube public, kube system, and kube node lease namespaces. Our pods and our services will be created under this default namespace. Okay, guys. Now, kube public, comma, kube system, and kube node lease namespaces will be used by Kubernetes cluster. We should not create our Kubernetes components in these 3 namespaces. Okay. You can create your pods and your services under the default, no problem. But we should not create our pods and our services in the 3 namespaces. One is a kube public, another one is a kube system, and third one is kube node lease. Those are used by our Kubernetes cluster. Okay. So we are trying to understand what is namespace in the Kubernetes. What is a namespace in the Kubernetes? Namespaces are equal to packages in the Java, right? Namespaces are used to group our Kubernetes components logically. So logically, the grouping can be done by using this namespace concept. We can create multiple namespaces in Kubernetes. What is the meaning of grouping our components logically? Application pods belongs to Ashok IT hyphen app hyphen namespace. Okay. DB pods are belongs to Ashok IT hyphen DB hyphen namespace. So like this, there are some pods for my application and there are some pods for my database. I want to group my application pods as one single group and database pods I want to group as one group, right? Application pods should be under one group, database pods should be under one group. So logically, I want to group my pods, application pods and database pods. So for that, we are going to use namespace. Can we create multiple namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster? Yes, we can create multiple namespaces in the Kubernetes cluster. Namespaces are logically isolated with each other. Now here, how to get the namespaces that are available in the Kubernetes? To get the namespaces that are available in the Kubernetes, we can go for kubectl get ns, kubectl get namespace. So in the Kubernetes, we will have below namespaces by default. Default namespace, kube public, kube system, kube node lease. Kube public, kube system, kube node lease will be used by our cluster. Okay. And when we are creating our pods, when we are creating our services without using namespace, then Kubernetes will consider default namespace for that. We should not create our components under these three namespaces because these are used by cluster. These are used by cluster. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear with my point? Come on, guys. Yep. What is a namespace? Why we need to use the namespaces? What is a namespace and why we need to go for namespaces? Come on. What is a namespace and why we need to go for namespace? Namespaces are used to group our pods logically. Okay. We can group our pods logically by using namespaces. All right. Now here, observe, I'm executing one command called kubectl get all. I'm executing a command called kubectl get all. When I execute kubectl get all, what it is doing? It is giving only one service. Okay. Now, if I go for kubectl get all -n kube system, what happened now? When I execute kubectl get all, that means it is considering default. So what all the pods, what all the services are running in the default namespace, it is giving when I execute kubectl get all. I want to get all the Kubernetes components which are belongs to kube system namespace. So if you want to get some information about your pods services running in the particular namespace, then you need to give -n namespace. So when I go for kubectl get all -n namespace kube system, these are the pods running in the kube system. This is the service running in the kube system. This is the daemon set running in the kube system. This is the deployment running in the kube system. This is the replication set running in the kube system. Kube system is the namespace which is using by our cluster. In that kube system namespace, pods, services, daemon set, deployment, replica sets are running. So can I use kube system to create my pods? No, we should not, because kube system namespace is using by our Kubernetes cluster to run our cluster components. Okay. So when I execute kubectl get all, it is giving only one service that is running in the default namespace. If you want to get the information about the particular namespace, then you can go for kubectl get all -n kube system. -n kube system represents it is a namespace. I want to get all the Kubernetes components which are belongs to kube system namespace. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear how to get the components belongs to particular namespace? Right. So here I'm using a command to get Kubernetes components. So what is the command? kubectl get all. When I go for kubectl get all, from which namespace it will get the details, guys? Am I giving any namespace or I'm not giving any namespace? I'm not giving any namespace. When I don't give any namespace, from which namespace it will get all the Kubernetes components? From which namespace it will get the Kubernetes components? Default namespace. Right. Get Kubernetes components. Get Kubernetes components of given namespace. For that, we need to use a command kubectl get all -n kube system. Okay. So what is this kube system? What is this kube system? It is a namespace. You can give namespace here. We can give namespace here. Example, you can execute a command kubectl get all -n kube system. kubectl get all -n kube system. So what is the meaning of kubectl get all -n kube system? What is the meaning of this command, guys? It will give you all the Kubernetes components belongs to kube system namespace. In the kube system namespace, you can see pods are running, services are running, daemon set, deployment, replica set. Those all are Kubernetes components. As of now, we know only pods and services. As of now, we know only pods and services. We need to understand what is a daemon set, what is a deployment, what is a replica set, what is a stateful set. Lot of things still we need to discuss. In the Kubernetes, as of now, we know how to create the pod, how to expose the pod by using service. But there is a lot of story in the Kubernetes. Okay, guys. Now, how to create our own namespace, how to create our pods and services under our own namespace. Now, it is highly recommended to create our components in the custom namespace. Don't use the default namespace also. In the real time, we will deploy our application pods under custom namespace. It is highly recommended. It is highly recommended to create our Kubernetes components under custom namespace. Clear, guys? If you don't specify any namespace, then it will take as the default namespace. But it is highly recommended to deploy our components in the custom namespace. How to create a custom namespace in the Kubernetes cluster? Create namespace. To create a namespace, here we can use kubectl create ns Ashok IT ns. I want to create one namespace with a name called Ashok IT namespace. kubectl create ns Ashok IT ns. Here you can give ns or you can give namespace also. The short form we can give as ns. kubectl create ns Ashok IT ns. Now, first let me get the namespaces. kubectl get ns. What are the namespaces available? Default available, public available, system available, node is available. My namespace is not available. Let me create a namespace. Let me create a namespace. Now here we can create the namespace here. We can create a namespace in two ways. Namespace can be created by using direct command, and namespace can be created by using manifest YML also. Right. Let me create the namespace directly. kubectl create namespace Ashok IT namespace. So with this, I have created a namespace. Now you can check kubectl create namespace Ashok IT namespace. With this, Ashok IT namespace is created. Get the namespaces which are created, kubectl get ns. Now you can see Ashok IT namespace is created 11 seconds ago. With this, I'm able to create one namespace by using a command like this. You can create a namespace by using manifest YML also. Now, how to do that? Vi Ashok IT dbns.yml. Now I want to create a namespace by using my manifest YML. Okay, go here, 3 hyphens, API version is a v1, kind, I want to create a namespace here. Kind is a namespace, metadata. Under metadata, we are going to specify the name. Under metadata, name. I want to create Ashok IT DB namespace. That's it. So this is my manifest YML to create a namespace. Now, save this file, kubectl apply -f Ashok IT DB namespace.yml. Now you see namespace DB namespace is created. I can create a namespace by using this command, and I can create a namespace by using manifest YML also. Right. It is highly recommended to create our components under custom namespace. Create namespace. Command to create a namespace. kubectl create namespace, Ashok IT namespace. We can create a namespace using manifest YML also. We can create namespace using manifest YML also. What is that manifest YML? Standard format. In the manifest YML, we will have API version, we will have kind, and we will have metadata. Specification is not required here because just to create the namespace, specification not required. API version, I'm giving as v1, kind. What is the purpose of this manifest? This manifest is used to create a namespace. What is the name you want to give for the namespace? And you can give the name as Ashok IT DB namespace. So once it is done, then simply you execute a command, kubectl apply -f manifest YML. So we can create the namespace directly by using create a namespace command, or you can create by using this manifest YML also. How to get the namespaces which are created? By using kubectl get ns command. Now let me go for kubectl get ns command. Now you can see Ashok IT DB namespace is available and Ashok IT namespace is also available. Ashok IT namespace I created by using this kubectl create command. Ashok IT DB namespace I created by using this DB namespace manifest YML. So how many ways we can create the namespaces, guys? How many ways we can create the namespaces? In 2 ways. What are the 2 ways to create the namespaces now? Through manifest YML and as well as through command. Now I want to delete particular namespace. Okay, I want to delete my namespace. kubectl get namespace. Namespaces are available. Delete that. kubectl delete namespace Ashok IT DB namespace. I want to delete that. Now you see my DB namespace is getting deleted. Whenever you delete a namespace, for example, I created a DB namespace. Inside the DB namespace, my DB pods are created. When I delete this namespace, these pods also will be deleted. Whenever you group the pods logically by using a namespace, when you delete the namespace, the components which are belongs to that namespace also will be deleted. Are you guys getting my point? Are you guys getting my point? Come on. Whenever you delete a namespace, all the components belongs to that namespace also will be deleted. Okay. Now here guys, I'm executing a command called kubectl delete all -all. What is the meaning of this command? What is the meaning of this command? I want to delete everything which I have created in the default namespace. Am I giving anything here? Namespace name? No. When I don't give anything here, it will delete everything which I have created under default namespace. Okay. kubectl delete all -all. Got it? Good. Now I have my manifest YML. In this manifest YML, currently, am I specifying the namespace or I'm not specifying the namespace? Let me go for our YML file. Java web application.yml. Let me go for the properties. Yeah, Visual Studio Code. Okay. Let me open this YML. In this YML, am I specifying the namespace in the YML? This YML contains my pod manifest as well as service manifest. In this YML, I'm having pod manifest as well as my service manifest. Am I specifying the namespace here or I'm not specifying the namespace here? Am I specifying the namespace here? I'm not specifying the namespace here. I'm not specifying the namespace here. Are you guys clear with my point? Now, I want to create a namespace and I want to create my pods and services under namespace. Okay, how can I do this? Let me go for kubectl get ns. Okay, then let me go for kubectl delete Ashok IT, kubectl delete ns Ashok IT ns. That means Ashok IT namespace I'm deleting. Ashok IT namespace I'm deleting. Okay, good. Now here, let me go for ls-l java web app.yml, remove that, remove java web app.yml. Now I don't have that YML file also. Okay guys, now here in this manifest YML, I want to specify a namespace also. Okay, I will go for API version as v1, kind as namespace, and metadata, I will specify the name as Ashok IT namespace. So with this, what I am trying to do here, in this in this manifest YML, namespace manifest is available, pod manifest is available, service manifest is also available. Then I want to use this namespace to create my pod and to create my service. So to use this namespace, in the metadata of our specification, we will specify namespace. We will specify namespace under metadata. Namespace, my namespace name is Ashok IT NS. That means I'm telling to create the pods under Ashok IT namespace. And the same thing in the service manifest also, under this metadata, I will specify namespace name, that is Ashok IT namespace. So in our manifest YML, here I'm writing this as a namespace manifest. So whenever I execute this YML by using kubectl, first this namespace will be created, then this pod will be created under that namespace, then this service will be created under that namespace. Okay, now here type I am giving as load balancer. Type I am giving as a load balancer. And here I am giving namespace name as Ashok IT namespace. Now take this YML, go here, vi java web.yml. Okay, let me paste this manifest YML. In this manifest YML, namespace manifest is available, pod manifest is available, service manifest is also available. What is the service type? I'm giving the service type as a load balancer. Now save this and close it. After this, let us execute what all the namespaces available. kubectl get namespace. So there is Ashok ID namespace is not available. Now let me execute my YML kubectl apply -f java web app.yml. I'm executing my YML. When I execute my YML, what happened? Namespace is created, my pods are created, my service is also created. Now let us execute kubectl get namespace. So when I execute kubectl get namespace, now I am getting Ashok ID namespace. When this namespace is created, who created this namespace? My manifest YML created that. So in the manifest YML, I specified the namespace, I specified the pod details, and I specified the service details also. So what is the service type? Service type is a load balancer. Now go and refresh here. Can you see the load balancer created now? Last time load balancer created, I have deleted that. Now again, I have created a service with the service type as a load balancer. So with this, the load balancer got created. Now, can you tell me the command to see the pods now? What is the command I need to use to see the pods? Which command we are using to check our pods? Guys, come on. Which commands I'm using to see the pods? kubectl get pods, huh? Okay. kubectl get pods. Oh, pods are displaying or pods are not displaying? Why the pods are not coming? Why the pods are not coming? This command checking for the pods under default namespace. But where our pods are created? Our pods are created in the default namespace, or our pods are created in the Ashok ID namespace? Yes, our pods are created under Ashok ID namespace. Now what I need to do? Get pods -n Ashok ID namespace. Under that namespace, my pod is running. My pod is running under that namespace. How to get the service? kubectl get service -n namespace name. My namespace name is Ashok ID namespace. My service is running. My service is running. What is the service type? Load balancer. So this external IP is called as load balancer URL. Copy this URL, go to browser /java web-app. I'm trying to access my application, which is deployed in the Kubernetes as load balancer service. Let us hit this URL and check it. Are you able to access the application? From the end user point of view, any difference? No, namespaces are for our organization, our organizing purpose. Right, for end user, it is just a URL we are giving to access the application. End user don't know what is pod, what is service, what is namespace. So that is our DevOps engineers will deploy the application in the cluster by using namespaces. By using namespaces, we are grouping our pods. Are you able to hit the URL? Are you able to access my application? Yes. Now my application is running in the Kubernetes cluster. My application is running in the Kubernetes cluster under Ashok IT namespace. Under Ashok IT namespace. Okay. Now I want to check the logs of the pod. Can you tell me a command to check the logs of the pod? Can you tell me a command to check the logs of the pod? Guys, how to check the logs of the pod? kubectl get logs. kubectl get logs. kubectl logs. kubectl logs pod name. kubectl logs pod name. What it is saying that? Is it able to recognize our pod or it is not able to recognize our pod? Is it recognizing our pod or it is not recognizing our pod? Not recognizing. Why? Our pod is not in the default namespace. Our pod is in the Ashok ID namespace. So now when you want to get it, you need to specify the namespace. Then you can get the logs of the pod. You got it? You got it how I am getting the logs of the pod. Now I want to delete my pod and I want to delete my service. Then do I need to delete the pod and service manually, or I will delete a namespace directly? Guys, now I want to delete everything which are in the Ashoka namespace. I want to delete the pods. I want to delete the services. How I will do that? How I will do that? Delete a namespace. If I delete a namespace, then what will happen? If I delete the namespace, whatever the components are available in the namespace, all those components will be deleted. All those components will be deleted. Right. Let me go here and let me delete it. kubectl delete namespace Ashok IT namespace. When I'm deleting the namespace, check it. It is taking some time because it has to clean up everything which is created under that namespace. Pod is available, service is available. Pod is available, service is available. Yep, it is deleting. Namespace is deleted. Okay, you can check kubectl get namespace Ashok IT namespace not available. Get ns Ashok IT namespace available or Ashok IT namespace not available? Ashok IT namespace not available. That namespace got deleted. That namespace got deleted. Are you guys clear with my point? Okay, guys, good. So I'm giving this manifest YML, which is used to creating pods and creating pod and service under custom namespace. I can say creating the pod and service under custom namespace. By using manifest YML, I'm creating namespace, I'm creating pod, and I'm creating my service also. So this is the manifest YML. By using this manifest YML, I'm creating everything. Now, how to execute this? So we already know the command to execute. We will use a command called kubectl apply -f YML. That YML is called as manifest YML. Okay. After creating this, how to check it? kubectl get all -n Ashok IT namespace. When you use get all -n Ashok IT namespace, under the Ashok IT namespace, how many pods are there, how many services are there, everything will be displayed. If you just want to get only pods, you need to go for kubectl get pods -n Ashok IT namespace. If you want to get the service, then you should go for kubectl get service -n Ashok IT namespace. If you want to get the logs of the pod, kubectl logs of your pod name -n Ashok IT namespace. If you want to delete that namespace completely, kubectl delete namespace Ashok IT namespace. So you can use this manifest YML. In this manifest YML, I'm telling to create a namespace and I'm telling to create the pod under this namespace. I'm telling to create a service under this namespace, and I want to create that pod service and namespace. For that, I'm using apply command. I want to see what all the components are running under Ashok IT namespace. By using get all command, I can do that. I want to see what all the pods available in the Ashok IT namespace. For that, get pods with the namespace, get services with the namespace. locks of the pod using namespace, and finally delete the namespace. When I delete the namespace, all the pods and services created under the namespace will be deleted. Okay, guys. If the namespace is deleted, in that namespace, what are the pods available? What are the services are available? Everything will be deleted. Now, I want to delete my database pods and I want to recreate them. Then I will delete this namespace. When I delete this namespace, the 3 pods which are belongs to this namespace also will be deleted. You got it? You got my point? So with this, are you clear with the namespace in the Kubernetes? Are you clear with the namespace in the Kubernetes? What is the purpose of namespace? Namespaces are equal to packages. They are used to group our Kubernetes components logically. Right. I want to do the deployment of application and database. Application container and database containers. Application containers should be created in 3 pods. Database containers should be created in the 3 pods. So total 6 pods. Out of these 6, which pods are belongs to application, which pods are belongs to database, we want to group them. For that, we will go for namespaces concept in the Kubernetes. Okay, clear? Perfect. People are asking, if the pod is deleted, how to recover that pod? Give me another 10 minutes, you will understand that concept. So with this, we are clear with 3 concepts in the Kubernetes: pods, services, and namespaces. Are you clear with pods, services, and namespaces? Are you clear with the pods, services, and namespaces? Yep. What is a pod? What is pod? Guys, what is pod? Come on. I need answer in the chat. What is pod? Smallest building block in the container, which is used to run smallest building block in the cluster. It is used to run our containers. In the Kubernetes, everything will be deployed as a pod. Inside the pod, our containers will be available. Okay. Now, pods are long-lived objects. Pods are short-lived objects. Pods are long-lived objects or short-lived objects. Short-lived objects. What is the meaning of short-lived objects? Guys, what is the meaning of short-lived objects? Pods can crash. Pods can destroy. Pods can damage. Okay. Pods will not exist for a long time. Pods can recreate at any point of time. So, can we depend on the pod IP to access our application? Can I use pod IP to access our application? No. Why we should not use pod IP to access our application? Pods are ephemeral. Pods will be recreated. When the pod is recreated, pod IP is going to change. So that's why when the pods are created, we need to expose the pods by using a service concept. In the Kubernetes, we have a concept called services. Services are used to access our pods, right? How many types of services available in the Kubernetes? How many types of services will be available in the Kubernetes? 3 types of services will be available in the Kubernetes. One is called cluster IP. Second one is node port. Third one is load balancer. What is the cluster IP? What is the cluster IP, guys? What is the cluster IP? All the pods will be mapped to one IP address in the cluster. All the pods will be mapped to one IP address in the cluster. That IP address will never change. We can access our pods with the cluster IP. If the pod is recreated, if the pod IP is changed, we no need to worry about it because our pods are mapped to cluster IP. One IP address will be generated to access our pods only within the cluster. Can I access my pods outside the cluster with the cluster IP service? No, we can't do that. We cannot do that. When to use the cluster IP? When to use the cluster IP, guys? Backend applications, databases will be deployed as cluster IP. What is a node port? What is the node port service? If you want to expose the pods outside the cluster, then you will go for node port. Node port. When we expose the pods by using node port, then we can access our application pods by using node IP. Node means worker node. Worker node IP address. What is the range of the node port number? If I don't give the node port number in the manifest YML, then what will happen? If I don't give the node port number in the manifest YML, then what will happen, guys? Random port number will be generated. What is the range of the random port number? 30,000 to 32,767. That is the interview question. RAM, it is not 3,000, it is 30,000. 30,000 to 32,767. That is the node port number range will be used by Kubernetes. Can I fix the node port number in my manifest YML? Can I tell to Kubernetes which port number it has to use? Yes, we can tell that which port number it has to use to expose our pods as a node port. If I don't specify the node port number in the manifest YML, then Kubernetes will choose a random port number between 30,000 to 32,767. In that range, it can take any number as a node port number. Node port is used to access our application outside the cluster. Okay. Now, what is load balancer? What is the benefit of going for load balancer? Guys, what is this load balancer and what is the benefit of this load balancer? It is used to distribute the node to all the worker nodes. If you go for node port, based on the node IP, we can access the application. But I want to distribute the load to all the worker nodes. Then we will go for the load balancer. When you go for the load balancer, one load balancer is created in the AWS cloud. Using that load balancer URL, we are able to access our application. And the next one, namespaces concept we discussed. What is the namespace in the Kubernetes? Namespaces are used to group our components logically. Database pods, I want to make as one group. Application pods, I want to make as one group. Front-end pods, I want to make as one group. So if you want to group your pods logically, then we can go for namespaces concept. Is it mandatory to use the namespace or it is optional to use the namespace in the Kubernetes? Optional. If I don't specify the namespace, then Kubernetes will use which namespace? Default. But it is highly recommended to create the namespace and create our components under the custom namespace. When I delete a custom namespace, then what will happen? When I delete a custom namespace, then what will happen? All the pods belongs to that namespace will be deleted. Okay. You got the clarity? Pod, service, and namespace. Difficult or easy? Guys, it is difficult or it is easy? I am making it easy for you. People will feel Kubernetes is very, very, very tough subject. I'm giving you in-depth knowledge. I'm giving you clear-cut explanation. I'm maintaining a clean and proper notes also. If you don't understand Kubernetes in my classes, you can't understand Kubernetes in any other class. Nobody will give you this much clarity on the Kubernetes. In other institutes, they will teach Kubernetes in 2 to 3 days. They will show you one application on the Kubernetes deployment and they will say that Kubernetes is completed. They will teach Kubernetes only 2 to 3 days and they will show one application deployment in the Kubernetes. Yes, Kubernetes is completed. But here it is not like that. At the certification level, we are understanding our Kubernetes. After my Kubernetes classes, you can write CKA certification, Kubernetes certified professional. Anybody who learned Kubernetes outside? Anybody who attended DevOps, already attended Kubernetes classes outside? Anybody want to share your experience? Baba Saheb, did you attend Kubernetes? Can you speak out?
Yes, sir. I attend other classes, but
In the
they are not explaining what way you are explaining.
How many days they explain Kubernetes?
Sir, 2-3 days.
Only
3
2-3 days.
3 days.
3 days Kubernetes completed.
Yeah, right. They just give overview about Kubernetes cluster, then what is pod, service namespaces, and replica set, daemon, all these things.
In 3 days they completed that.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Anyone else, guys? Vaibhav, what is your experience?
It is very right, sir.
Yeah. So you already learned Kubernetes?
Yes, I'm learning Kubernetes, but within the 2 days they are completed.
2 days they completed Kubernetes.
Yes, yes. So for Kubernetes, that's why I just inquired on your Ashok IT classes.
Okay.
And because I'm here working here only on Kubernetes part.
Okay.
So I
Okay. You are
need
already
to-
working on the Kubernetes.
Yes, yes.
Good. So I hope now you are getting the clarity.
Yes. Thanks to you, sir.
Good. Yeah. Abhishek, what is your experience with Kubernetes?
Yeah, sir. Actually, I thought to share. Actually, in the market, they are promising that they will teach it within 6 hours Kubernetes. So it was like I joined them, and just this they told about the architecture, the components, and then one or two examples for the deployment. That's
Okay.
over.
That's over. All right.
And when I attended the interview, I got stuck.
Okay. Yeah, guys. So next 10 days we are going to work with the Kubernetes only. Okay, because Kubernetes is very interesting subject and lot of concepts are there in the Kubernetes which are very, very, very important for every DevOps engineer to crack the interview as well as to work in the company. Okay, good. Fine. Before moving on to the next topic, anybody having any questions, you can unmute your mic and you can ask. Session is not completed, guys. Just 5 minutes I'm giving for the doubts. After that, I will go for the new topic.
Ashok, one question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are writing manifesto files, right? Sure.
Right.
So there in the first, we are specifying the API version.
Right.
So I could see some other YAML files with version with the latest version. There were a lot of changes in the
No. Yeah, versions will be different. Now for the pods namespaces, we are giving the version as V1. When we go for the deployment stateful set, the versions will be changed. Apps V1 like that, the different versions will be available.
Okay, so based on the versions, the metadata and spec areas will be
No, sir. No, that is not depends on that. So in API versions, I will explain you what are the API versions available in the Kubernetes for writing the manifest files.
Okay, so API version means it's depends upon the kind what we are mentioning, right?
Right, correct.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Yes. So I tried to create that one, cluster. So do I put that instead of putting your Ashok IT? So I put that Ben IT. So I couldn't create that one actually. That I sent that text the message, which is actually it's not pulling up that my image.
So you need to keep your image name. Do you have your image in your Docker Hub account?
Yeah, I have it actually. Okay, well, I put the wrong one. Okay. So that's an Abner 05, but I put that Ben 90, so it's the wrong one. Okay, I can. Okay. So second thing actually, this actually might be that very funny question. What is actually that daemon set, daemon and also manifest? What is it?
Yeah, we will come to that. The next topic is related to Kubernetes components. We need to understand replication controller, replication set, deployment, stateful set, daemon set. Those are the next topics for next 1 week.
Okay. Manifest file means actually we have to
It
create
is
that
the
one.
manifest YML, nothing but whatever the YML that we are writing to do our Kubernetes operations, that is called as manifest YML. We have to write this YML.
Okay, that's metadata. Actually, we are providing metadata, or we are so that what is that actually metadata?
Metadata, nothing but we are specifying the metadata about our Kubernetes component. Suppose I'm creating a pod. So for the pod, I want to give some name and I want to give some label that we are specifying as metadata.
Okay.
Right.
Ashok, I have a doubt on namespaces. Basically, as we discussed, like namespaces is used to, grouping of the objects, Kubernetes object, right?
Correct.
So as we have already done the data grouping of the object, but the thing is, what will happen if we'll not do this? Because as we learned the pod, right? Pod manifest, I understand that we have to deploy the application for inside the pod container will run it. So now we come to the service manifest, like because service manifest used to, because to expose the pod outside the cluster, it's very much important. But namespaces, what exactly the use?
Management purpose. Management purpose. Sir, suppose for example, I'm running 30 pods in my application. Out of 30, 10 pods are belongs to front end, 10 pods are belongs to back end, 10 pods are belongs to database. How can you differentiate which pods are belongs to database, which pods are belongs to application, back end and front end?
Okay.
Tomorrow, I want to delete the database pods. Then how can you identify them? How can you identify them?
Yeah, but why we will delete the database pod? Our application will stop, right?
So database means, suppose if it is a dev environment, I want to recreate the database.
Okay.
Not for the production. Let's think about the dev environment.
Okay.
I want to recreate the database.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So if you want to identify the pods easily, then we need to go for the namespaces. It's like a grouping. If you have the grouping, your operation will become easy, your management will become easy, right? Instead of keeping everything in the single room, we will do the partition in our room. So partitioning. Namespace is nothing but partitioning.
Hi, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hello.
One more last question. So when I create actually that MubX actually is not communicating it because the SSH problem or the port issue or security group issue. When I create actually Amazon Linux machine is went well, but actually that you bought the 20.
For Ubuntu, the username you need to keep as Ubuntu, not EC2 user.
Yeah, I did actually, but actually instead of creating actually the Ubuntu 20.04 is not allowed to do access actually the timeout, something like that.
No, sir. So not like this. I will check this at the once the class is completed. I will check your issue.
I could delete all the clusters and everything, but I'm unable to delete the elastic IP address. The service
Yeah, elastic IP address you can't delete directly, sir. To delete the elastic IP, first you need to delete the NAT gateway. Then you need to delete your subnet. Then you need to delete VPC. Then only you can delete the elastic IP. Okay.
So how to do all those things, sir?
So now it is not required to do. We will discuss at the end of the Kubernetes.
Okay. I mean, the charges will continue, sir. Elastic IP if it is not allotted.
Yes, charges will continue. As I told you, we can make it as 0. No problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I told you that Kubernetes will not deduct any amount.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
For first time, they will make it 0. Even if they don't make it 0, the only thing that they will do is they will terminate your account. You can create a new account for the practice. No problem. First, concentrate on this subject.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, actually, sir, I want to add the role, means full access. I am a full access and all 5 roles, but unable to add, sir. Option is not coming.
You need to go for IAM role and you need to select that. At the end of the class, I will check that. Okay. I have uploaded the video also. In the video, you can see how I have added the roles.
Okay, sir.
Sir, if there is any error in the YAML file, how can we debug the YAML file?
Sir, in the Visual Studio Code, whenever you are writing this YAML, I told you to install the YAML extension, right? So whenever you install the YAML extension, if you do any mistake in the YAML, it will show you here itself. Suppose I'm not following these naming conventions properly. Okay, so then the exception will come immediately. Here it will show you the red color underline. That means it is an exception.
Okay.
Got it. Good.
Yeah, Ashok.
Yep.
Yeah, how can we connect a different namespace application?
We'll come to that, sir. We'll deploy one front-end application, back-end application with the different namespaces, and we will communicate with them.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Just now we understood the concept. Whatever we are discussing, everything we will implement with your project.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, hi Ashok sir. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, how we can create multiple pods for same image?
That is the now topic is that only.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
As of now, we are creating a single pod with pod manifest, right? How many pods are creating with this manifest YML now? Only one pod is getting created. Okay. How to create the multiple pods? What will happen when the pod is deleted? Now we are going to discuss those things.
Yeah, I have another question. Like pod contains multiple container. So if my one pod contains multiple containers, so how we can organize that pod in package?
Here container section is available, right? Here I have given one image. Here you can give one more image also to create that.
Okay.
Here I have given one container data. You can just copy paste this. Then another container also can be created like this. This is one container and this is another container. Like this,
yeah.
You can.
Yeah, but this is a different applications, and how we can organize this pod in namespace.
Yeah, I will show you. I will show you that also.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But generally, we don't create multiple containers in one pod. In one pod, we'll create one container in the real time.
Yeah,
so like this, I'm specifying the pod manifest. In the pod manifest, I'm giving my container specification. In the container specification, I'm giving which image it has to pull to create the container and which port number the container will use.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Fine. Any other questions, anyone?
Ashok, in YML file, we have using YML file, we have created pod and namespace, right? So like that, will there be any?
Yes, we will come
creating.
to that. Yeah. Okay. Replication. This is not actually, we don't write this kind of manifest for the project real deployment. This is just for our understanding how to create the pod we discussed, right? Yeah. Now the real concepts are going to start now. Replication set, replication controller, deployment, stateful set, daemon set, all those kind of things we are going to write in the YML.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This is just a basic trailer.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's a real-time scenario actually when we are creating actually the pod and node and pod, everything. Suppose we are actually, we don't want to recur, suppose we cannot, we don't want, we can delete that one or the real-time scenario? How does it work?
Yes, we'll do that. We'll understand that concept now, okay?
Okay.
Perfect. Now, guys.
Sir, one more question is there. Yeah. Actually, in interview, they asked me like when Virat Kohli comes to play in Hotstar, the number of viewers increases. So how does
load balance? Load balance.
Okay. So can you like just explain?
You will get that scenario. You need time.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Guys, now I'm changing my service type to node port here. Node port number also I'm fixing. That is 30785, which I added in my security groups. Perfect. Good. Now, guys, as of now, we created our pods directly by using pod manifest YML. We created the pod by using pod manifest YML. Let me do one thing. rm java web app.yml. Now vi java web app.yml. Now I want to deploy my application. Now I'm not going to use any namespace, guys. Let me deploy my application directly with a node port. Node port number also I'm giving here. In this manifest, the namespace is not available. Directly, I'm going to deploy my application. API version, that is pod manifest available, and service manifest also available. I'm deploying that on the node port. Okay. Let's apply. Before that, let me delete everything. kubectl delete all -all. In the default namespace, whatever is available, everything will be deleted. After this, I want to create my pods. kubectl apply -f java web app.yml. So with this, you can see my pod is created and my service is also up and running. Let me execute a command. Let me execute a command. kubectl get pods. Under the default namespace, what are the pods available? It is getting that. Now if I go for kubectl get service, what are the services available? I'm getting that. So kubectl get pods, I'm able to see the pod which is running. kubectl get service, I'm able to see the service which is running. Now we can access our application with the node IP. Okay, the service type I'm giving as a node, right? Now here, let me go for this node. Let me access its IP and let me click on this URL 3085/Java web app. So now my pod is running in the cluster. That pod is exposed as a node port and I'm able to access that application. Can you guys check it and let me know? Is my URL accessible for you? I gave the URL in the chat box. Can you click on that URL and let me know? Is it accessible for you? Yeah, good. People are able to access the URL. Okay, guys, perfect. Now, let's assume that I have deleted my pod. Now see here, my pod is running, my application is running, and I'm able to access my application outside of the cluster. In my browser, in my Windows machine browser, I'm able to access my application. Got it? But here, assume that whatever the pod is there, that pod got deleted. kubectl delete pod and pod name. I'm trying to delete my pod. Okay, I have deleted my pod. When the pod is deleted, now check it. kubectl get pods. kubectl get pods. My pod is available or my pod is not available? My pod is not available. Now, can you hit the URL of my application now? Can you hit the URL of my application? My URL is accessible or my URL is not accessible now? I have deleted my pod. Can you see my URL is accessible now or my URL is not accessible now? Not accessible. Why it is not accessible? Why my URL is not accessible? Because pod is deleted. Pod is deleted. How I deleted that pod? By using kubectl delete pod name. So earlier, when I execute kubectl get pods, then the pod got deleted. When the pod is deleted, application is down. Pod is deleted, nothing but container also gone. My application is not accessible. When I execute kubectl get pods, pod is available or pod is not available after deletion? After deletion, the pod is available or the pod is not available? Pod is not available. Now, if you observe, pod is deleted. When I delete the pod, Kubernetes recreated the pod or Kubernetes not recreated the pod? When I delete the pod, Kubernetes is recreated the pod or Kubernetes is not recreating the pod? Kubernetes is not recreating the pod when the pod is deleted. So here we have high availability for our application, or we don't have high availability for our application? High availability available for our application or high availability not available for our application? High availability not available for our application. So that means whatever the process we are following to create the pod, that is not recommended approach. We practiced what is pod manifest, how to create the pod, how to expose the pod by using service. But in the real time, can I go and deploy my project like this? With this manifest YML, can I deploy my real-time project? No, because when the pod is damaged, Kubernetes is not recreating my pod. Okay, observe. Observe the concept now. Guys, careful. From now, the real-time concepts are getting started. As of now, we have created pods manually by using pod manifest. As of now, we have created pods using pod manifest. Using pod manifest YML. As of now, we have created pods manually using pod manifest YML. If we delete the pod, then our application will be down. Kubernetes is not recreating the pod. If we delete our pod, Kubernetes not recreating the pod. Kubernetes not recreating the pod. Hence, application will be down. Hence, application will be down. Application down means we can't access our application. People cannot access our application. As of now, we created pods manually using pod manifest YML. If we delete our pod, Kubernetes is not recreating the pod. Hence, application will be down. Application will be down. Okay, how I am deleting the pod? kubectl delete pod, and I'm giving name for the pod. Okay, delete pod. Now, after deleting the pod, you can check the pods, whether pod is recreated or not. By using kubectl get pods command, we can check it. Pods are recreated or not recreated. Pods are not recreated. Pod is not recreated because we created pod manually. Pod is not recreated. Pod is not recreated because we have created pod manually. Pod is not recreated because we have created pod manually. It is not recommended to create the pods manually. It is not recommended to create pods manually. Okay, guys, we need to create the pods by using Kubernetes components. Always we need to create the pods. Always we need to create the pods. We need to create the pods using Kubernetes components, or I can say resources. Resources. What are the resources are available? Always we need to create the Kubernetes pods using below Kubernetes. Always we need to create the pods using below Kubernetes components or resources. What are the resources available in the Kubernetes to create the pod? There is a concept called replication controller. There is a concept called replica set. And there is a concept called deployment. And there is a concept called deployment. And there is a concept called stateful set. There is a concept called stateful set. And there is a concept called daemon set. Okay, so here, as of now, I'm writing my pod manifest YML and I'm creating the pods and I'm exposing the pods by using services. That is okay. But if the pod is deleted, then who is responsible to create the pod? Is Kubernetes taking the responsibility to recreate my pod when I delete that? Is Kubernetes taking the responsibility to recreate the pod when I delete my pod? Guys, Kubernetes is recreating my pod or Kubernetes is not recreating my pod? Kubernetes is not recreating our pod. Now, why it is not recreating is, as of now, we created the pods manually using pod manifest YML. If we delete our pod, Kubernetes is not recreating the pod, hence application will be down. How to delete a pod? kubectl delete pod, pod name. kubectl get pods. Pod is not recreated because we created manually. It is not at all recommended to create the pods manually using pod manifest. Always we need to create the pods using below Kubernetes components. One is a replication controller, second one is a replica set, third one is a deployment, fourth one is a stateful set, and fifth one is a daemon set. In the interview, they will ask questions on services and these concepts. Right. Replication controller, replication set, deployment, stateful set, and daemon set. Got it. Now here, whenever we create the pods by using these components, right? By using these resources, Kubernetes will provide self-healing capability. If you delete the pod, Kubernetes will recreate the pod. If your pod is crashed, no problem, Kubernetes will recreate the pod. So here, when we are going for Kubernetes deployments, we need to create the pods by using Kubernetes resources. Don't create the pods manually. If you create the pods manually, when the pod is deleted, Kubernetes will not do anything. So here, if you want to deploy your application with a high availability, then you need to create the pods by using these resources. Replication controller, replication set, replica set, deployment, stateful set, daemon set. These concepts are available. Now let's understand these concepts one by one. So let's start with replication controller. So what is this replication controller? Replication controller is a Kubernetes component which is used to create the pods. As of now, I created the pod. How I created? Manually I created by writing the pod manifest. I want to create a pod, kind pod. This is the pod name, pod label, and container data. I have given that. Okay. But from now onwards, I need to create the pods by using Kubernetes resources. I need to create them by using Kubernetes resources. So here, replication controller is available. So it is replication controller. It is a Kubernetes component which is used to create pods. It is a Kubernetes component which is used to create the pods. It will make sure always given number of pods are running. If I tell to replication controller to run the 2 pods, 24/7 it will run the 2 pods. In those 2 pods, if you delete 1 pod also, no problem. Replication controller will recreate that pod. Are you guys getting my point? So replication controller is available. It is a Kubernetes component which is used to create pods. So why we are going to create the pods by using replication controller? It will make sure always given number of pods are running for our application. So here, if I specify create 2 pods. It will create the 2 pods. It will run the 2 pods. What about if one pod is deleted? Replication controller will recreate the new pod when one pod is deleted. So that is the meaning of it will make sure always given number of pods are running for our application. So it will take care of pod life cycle. It will take care of pod life cycle. It will take care of pod life cycle. Note, when pod is deleted, when pod is crashed or damaged or deleted, then RC, nothing but replication controller in the Kubernetes. So this RC will replace that damaged or crashed or deleted pod with the new pod. When pod is crashed or damaged or deleted, then RC will create new pod for that. Will create new pod. Now, using replication controller, we can scale up our pods and we can scale down our pods. Now I have created 2 pods for my application, but now I want to go for 10 pods. I can scale up, I can increase the pod count, I can decrease the pod count by using this replication controller. We can scale up and scale down pods count using replication controller. We can scale up and scale down pods count by using replication controller. What is replication controller? Replication controller is a Kubernetes component which is used to create the pods. Why we need to create the pods by using replication controller? It will make sure always given number of pods are running for our application. It will take care of pod life cycle. When pod is crashed or damaged or deleted, then replication controller will recreate the pod, will create a new pod for that. It will replace the damaged pod with the new pod. When we create the pod by using replication controller, we can scale up and scale down pods count. Right. I'm running my application with the 2 pods. Now I want to go for 5 pods or I want to go for 10 pods. From 10, I want to come back to 4 pods again. Then we can go for this replication controller. Now see how to write a manifest file to create the pods by using replication controller. I'm creating a new YML, guys. I'm creating a new YML. So same like this, syntax will be available to create the pod. Okay, let me copy this. Let me go for a new file. Let me save this as rc.yml. rc.yml. Now let me delete everything. Nothing is available. I want to write the manifest file to create the pods by using replication controller. So here, first thing, API version for for replication controller, I will give API version and I will give metadata. API version, kind and metadata. Kind will be available, metadata will be available, spec will be available.
Hello.
I think Ashok got disconnected. Yeah, I think network issue is there. No.
We just wait. He might just join back. Hello.